Thank you so much for that. Yes, thank you, Edward. Thank you for doing a short version of that. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for sharing that, a short version of it. Much appreciated. That's Edward from SFU. He's a scholar there. So yes, thank you for that performance. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral, traditional, and unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples on which Vancouver residents live, work, and study. Given the virtual format of today's event, you're welcome to take a moment to reflect on the Indigenous lands that you are on today. As mentioned, this event has been co-organized by the Liu Institute Network for Africa, also known as LINA, and the Collective for Gender Class and Research. The LINA is a research-based network of UBC branching out to the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, emerging from the need for a platform to bring together stakeholders within research and policy institutions to address policy issues in Africa. The Gender Plus Collective is situated within the UBC Office for Regional and International Community Engagement. This initiative works to promote a community for rich dialogue in which gender and other identity intersections, including but not limited to race, class, sexuality, and ability, are considered when conducting research. With further ado, I am pleased to introduce our moderator today, Ms. Lilian Umuhuza. Lilian is a young professional from Rwanda, experienced in working with international organizations, fundraising, program design, and advocacy. She graduated from UNITA College in the US with a BA in Peace and Conflict Studies. She's currently a first-year student at the Master of Public Policy and Global Affairs program at UBC. One of her many achievements is that she's a founder of the Genocide Survivors Retreat, a program that offers psychological and financial support to women who experienced rape during the genocide against the Tutsi. She has worked with the Institute of International Education in Washington, D.C., a nonprofit that works to promote peace through education, as well as a Foundation Rwanda, a US-based organization that supports children born of genocide rape. She's a seasoned public speaker, passionate about social justice, sustainable development, and promoting actions against human rights abuse. Now I pass it over to Lilian. Thank you, Lilian, for moderating this event.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for attending this event. This event marks the final installment of an event series celebrating African women's outstanding contribution to the community and examining the prevailing challenges that still require intensified investments for change to empower women. We are excited to welcome distinguished speaker, Her Excellency Dr. Ameenah Gurib Fakim, who has joined us today to speak more about her life through various experiences as a professor, biodiversity scientist, entrepreneur, author, and 6th President of the Republic of Mauritius. Ameenah Gurib Fakim served as the 6th and first female President of the Republic of Mauritius from 2016 to 2018. Prior to that, she has been the managing director of the Center International the Development Pharmaceutic Research and Innovation, as well as professor of organic chemistry with endowed chair at the University of Mauritius. She has served as a dean of the Faculty of Science and provides chancellor. She has authored and co-edited 30 books, several books, chapters, and served books, chapters, and scientist articles in the field of biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. I will keep my introduction of her brief so that she can share more with us just in a moment. We would also encourage questions from the audience through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen as you listen. Dr. Ameenah, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this event, and thank you so much for being with us. I will just pass it on to you, and if you would like to tell us anything about, to share with us something about yourself, about the work you have done, which we know mostly, but I would just like to pass it to you first and just hear from you and greet everybody who is attending this.
Well, first of all, thank you to the UBC team for associating me with this event. And I think these events are very important to bring on board this notion of gender, women empowerment, and why women contribution matter to the continent, of course, not just in Africa, but elsewhere in the world. And Lilian, when you were introducing me, there was one feature that you did not mention. I'm also a mother. I'm mother of 2 children. So I have that hat, this feather in my hat as well, that is non-negligible in terms of achievement. People always ask me what has been my journey. I can say very quickly that I've had the audacity of living my 4th life, because I have been, as you have rightly said, an academic. I have been an entrepreneur. I have been the first woman head of state, first female head of state in my country, first female Muslim head of state for the entire African continent. So this is something that I've had so far, and right now I am in a position where I can do all 3 and speak of all 3 lives and bring it to bear to the young girls out there that it is possible. It is possible to do all these. It is possible, provided you have the foundation which my parents gave me when I was very young. And that foundation came with education. And there was no exclusion in my family. I mean, my parents were very keen on giving my brother and myself equal opportunities. And I think this is what makes a very big difference. And I think also, as we are among, well, many women, young women, you know, I've had a father who has been my best cheerleader, and he believed in me. And this is the message I take to young parents as well. Make sure that the father is the cheerleader of that young girl, because I've been able to live all these lives simply because my father told me from a very young age that I was capable of doing anything. And I think when you grow up with that self-confidence kind of drilled into you at a very young age, you should be frightened too, because you can do it.
Actually, that was my first question, and you just responded to it. You were really a lot of many things in one person, like like you mentioned, like the science, academics, politics, and the mother. That's really an important aspect of your experience, I'm sure. And you just mentioned something about having the support from family, and also from a young age. And in one of your speech at the International Labour Conference, you said, in quote, eliminating gender inequality and empowering women could raise the productive potential of 1 billion Africans, delivering a huge boost to the continent's development potential. Why is it important that all nations invest in closing the gender gaps that still exist in different communities, drawing from your personal experience?
Yes, I will take the example from a country very close to yours right now. That's the United States. When the United States introduced Title IX, all right, and ensuring equal access to girls into education and so many other features, I mean, that move was perceived to have been, well, it wasn't looked down. It was looked down upon. It wasn't looked up to, because people thought that, what will that bring? And we are finding that almost 50 years since the start of Title IX, we have seen tremendous potential in America, and they are still reaping the benefit. And I think the IMF has also done some studies. They have shown that countries that actually empower women into the economy, they are the countries which actually bring in 2 or sometimes 3 GDP points to the country. So this is something that is non-negligible. And as I said, and I will say it again, I will say it now, educating a girl, empowering a woman is not just the ethical thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. Because we cannot, in a way, I will adopt a very cliche, which I've used also in the past, any country or any football match cannot think of winning the match if they're going to leave 52% of the team on the bench. So you have to bring the whole team together. And I think over the past 2 years, what we have seen also in the COVID, women bring in a different lens, a different approach to management and to leadership. And this is something that we need to bring together. And I will also end by this part to say that we will never have gender equality. What I want to see is much more gender complementarity.
Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by gender complementarity?
Because we come in with features which are, of course, unique to women, the way we tackle things. I mean, women have shown that being compassionate is not weak. When we communicate, we're not showing weakness, we are showing strength. And those women who have been communicating, especially over the pandemic, they have been communicating, they have shown compassion. They have shown that when a life is lost because of the COVID, it should not be counted purely as form of statistics. It should be used to ensure that no more lives are lost. So we bring in a different approach to leadership. And this is something that we want people to recognize. We want societies to recognize. And this morning I was reading that even the EU now, they are thinking that by 2025, I think, boards must have 40% representation of women. So it is coming in slowly, but surely, that women contribution, women intuition, women way of doing business, way of doing things matter and should be utilized for the benefit of the country.
Dr. Ameenah, maybe I will like to really hear from you about your journey becoming the president. Have you ever dreamed of becoming a president?
Never. I grew up in a very tiny village in my country of Mauritius. And I grew up at a time when there was nothing in terms of infrastructure in my village. There was only one school. And I have said already that I am a Muslim by faith, and I went all my life to a Catholic convent school, to a Catholic school. And that, to me, I posit that because that diversity matters, especially in our current environment where, you know, we're being split along the fault lines of religion, of, you know, all sorts of issues. I think I want to put that there because that diversity made me a much stronger person right from the word go, because I had Hindus as neighbors. I went to Catholic school, and I was lucky when I went because I said the education was, of course, being paid for by my parents because it wasn't free at the time when I was growing up. But when I went to school, I was infected by the virus of science, by teachers who were able to teach me science in a very, very simple way. So I grew up with that passion for science, and that's what took me to university to study chemistry. Then it took me over to do a PhD because I was still passionate, I was still looking for that chemistry. When I came back to my country, I realized I couldn't do the science I was used to. So I thought, you know, in a very lateral way of going to the sciences through the study of herbal knowledge, which our grandfathers and grandmothers are very good at. And based on this, I built an academic career. Then when I found that the journey was about to end in that academic career, I took the leap into the unknown by going to become an entrepreneur. I started my business based on my research, which is again something completely anathema in Africa. And here again, I want to highlight why it matters. It matters because young people like yourself, if ever you come back to the continent, will have to become job creators as opposed to job seekers. So I did that. I realized how important it is to be job creators. And then the call for office came, and I was very happy to, again, jump ship. But all this is done through two important words I will put here: passion and the notion of taking risk. That's what I've done.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really inspiring, especially to the young people. There's a lot of young people who are attending this webinar, and most of them are future policy practitioners, maybe future presidents. It's really an inspiration to hear this this message from you. Dr. Ameenah, during your, being a president, I assume, I've never been a president, but comes with a lot of power dynamics, both locally and internationally. How did you overcome some of the challenges that you faced during your presidency, as a mother, as you say, as a female, but also as an as someone who's into academic, as a scientist? Like, how did you, overcome all those challenges? And also, how did or your background and your experience played a role during your presidency?
You know, just like any other profession, I mean, I know that being a president is not a profession per se, you know, it's a function you occupy for a certain time. I think you really have to look at this function into what you want to achieve, into what mark you want to leave behind. And I come from a very diverse country, and I still know that this diversity is our strength. And how to bring in the human capital around this notion of our diversity is our strength. And I started on many fronts, but at the same time with the knowledge that when you are at that position, you're walking on eggs and not breaking them at the same time. So you have to bring in that diversity. You have to make sure that you actually become the unifying feature. And how do you do that? Is you make sure people get to know each other. I know Rwanda has had a very painful history because of that, kind of intolerance to the diversity that was there. So I was trying to promote interfaith and intercultural and interreligious dialogue, get people to know each other. Then the other thing that I also did is precisely the messaging that science matters, education of our young people matter. And this is where governments have to invest in that space. And I use the word very carefully here, investment. It is not an expense. Educating our youth is not an expensive investment. And also, if we want to actually look forward to 2030 through the SDGs, success in the SDGs, we need to actually make sure that we create the ecosystems that the young people can turn to become precisely the job creators, not job seekers. And one thing we have to bear in mind as well, by 2050, 1 in 4 persons on this planet is going to be African. So we are talking at the youth of Africa, and you are the resources with which we will build the continent. So we need to empower you. We need to give you the tools. We need to give you the quality education that really reflects the needs of what we want to do now to improve our economies.
Thank you. Dr. Ameenah, now that you just spoke about diversity, and you just talked about Rwanda and what happened in Rwanda, the genocide against the Tutsi, it made me think about there's a lot of I want to ask you something about the empty promise of never again. So and also maybe tied to many conflicts and violence happening around the world, a lot of wars. And what would you say? What can we do as future policy practitioners, as future politicians, future presidents? What can we do, especially speaking to the young generation? What can we do to really make sure that peace prevails? And what can we do to turn never again into a reality? What can we do to stop all this violence happening? What are the practical actions that we can take, as young people, I believe, starting from today and also for the future?
This continent of ours is always being perceived as being a poor continent because people are poor. I mean, the majority of the people on this continent, in many parts of the world, they operate on less than $2 a day, and that's unacceptable. Why I say this, because this continent is one of the richest and has driven all the industrial revolution and about to also drive the 4th one, because through the rare metals, because you want to transition into renewable energy, into all the 4th industrial revolution we talk about, and yet Africa has leveraged all the other 3. Now, I look at Africa's future with the lens of about 60 years post-independence history, right? Independence, we'll be starting getting this in 1960, of course, Ghana being the first one. But at the same time, we can't forget the weight of history going back to the 1884 Berlin Conference that actually split up Africa into the country we have. Having said this, we are where we are right now. Frontiers have been established, and we have this weight of history behind us. We're going to have to look forward to Agenda 2063 that the African Union has set. How are we going to build the continent? How are we going to promote intra-Africa trade? This has already started with the intra-Africa Free Trade Agreement, which has been signed, ratified, and is ongoing. So we need to build Africa through our own culture, through our own tradition, through our own strength, through our own history, and through our own knowledge. And this is something that, we have to make sure that the young people like yourself, you are going to be very proud to say, not just I'm Rwandan, I'm proud to be Rwandan, but I'm proud to be African. And this comes when we start recognizing our own legacy, our own future, our own heritage.
Thank you, Dr. Ameenah. Now I'd like you to take us back a little bit to maybe to share with us, some of your early inspirations, people or moments that really inspired your career trajectory.
Inspirations in terms of role models, or any other kind of experience that you encountered and then. Oh, yes. There has been some very important moment that have, well, first of all, if you want to ask me what has been the most blessed moment I've had in my life, I think it's the privilege of having been able to become a mother. It's not a given. But to me, as a woman, I think this is the best thing that can ever happen to a woman. And I'm very privileged to say that I'm a proud and a very happy mother. But in terms of my kind of foray into the world of science, there has been two very flagship moments that have really shaped my decision to become a scientist. One of them has been watching the landing of men on the moon. And the second time was when test tube baby Brown was born in 1978. This one I said to myself, well, science is so transformational. And it needs to be looked at very carefully. Then the other important moment I also felt was very important is when I took that step to become an entrepreneur. This is when I said to myself, well, this is it. I need to go there, sink or swim, but I chose to swim. And so I was very, very happy. These were very proud moments as well.
Thank you. That's really powerful. Dr. Ameenah, I think, I cannot, in this webinar, if we don't talk about climate change, I don't think it will be a good decision to take. And I know you are, you have had a lot of discussion about climate change. And recently there was COP27, that brought countries together to talk about climate change. Developing countries now have the Loss and Damage Fund commitment coming out of the climate change conference, COP27. What are your thoughts about that? How do you think that's going to be implemented, and how do you think that's going to impact the challenges that we're facing today in climate change?
You have already said we have COP27. So that means for the past 27 years, we have been discussing about the climate. And scientists have already been kind of really ring the alarm bell since the 1970s that climate change is real, and we haven't done much about it. We all know also that one of the main points, a sticking point, sore point about climate change is the emission. And people are saying that, by 2063 or by 2060, we're going to be carbon neutral. Well, nature is telling us something very fundamental. Nature is not going to adhere to our timetable. And as we speak today, I've just read in the news that a city like Jeddah in desert of Saudi Arabia, they have had 3 years rain in 6 hours. So if this is not something that, if this isn't the symptoms that the world is not listening, I think we are in very bad shape. And unfortunately, I'm going to be very pessimistic here that, this is something that needs to be addressed at the multilateral level. And I don't think that countries, especially the developed North, is taking that very seriously. They have started to think about climate change now. Why? Because you are seeing that there has been fires in the Western Hemisphere. We're seeing flooding there as well. So I think it's only now that people are really taking some notice, but we haven't seen that mobilization as we have seen to address the COVID, for example. And where I see the unfairness is that a continent like Africa, which has produced less than 5% of greenhouse gas emission, this is a continent which is most affected. With fires, with drought, with in my case, a small island, we are witnessing even more stronger cyclones. And the acidity of the ocean is not helping the coral reef, or neither is the temperature, which is bleaching the coral reef. And who says coral reef means, of course, a huge diversity, which gets lost, and of course provides about 12% of our protein in our diet. So, there are a lot of consequences. There are a lot of damage that's going to happen, but unfortunately, we are not addressing it fast enough.
And what can we do to really, make sure that all nations participate in making sure that, invest in climate change? I am a huge believer in action, right? And I even drawing from my experience coming from Rwanda, I always believe that all the genocide that had happened, they could have been stopped if, we took action. But I think that most international organizations really fail in taking action. There's a lot of talks, there's a lot of conferences and writings that are amazing, but implementation is different from what they say. And I think also in the climate change, there's a lot of, it's a hot topic, but there's a lack of action. Like, what can we do? Like, what is your advice?
Well, to just take you back 2 years, I mean, take you back to the COVID. I mean, how much sharing of vaccines did you see? Not much, right? And unfortunately, I will say something here, which maybe people haven't thought about this, but you know, when there was the Omicron strain that came about, Africans were saying that the Omicron is the vaccine we never had, right? Only 6% of Africa is vaccinated. Yeah. And it is telling. And as you say, we need action. We need strong multilateral organization. We need countries to step up in terms of funding. We need sharing of technology so that countries in the South can adapt. And unfortunately, what we saw coming out of Egypt is this morning, I saw one of these memes going around, that you saw all these private jets coming in and telling people that they have to start biking to go to work. I mean, this is not something that we can accept or we can afford. So we need to reduce emission. We need countries to step up. We need to capitalize the Green Fund. And so that's what we have to do. And more sharing, definitely more sharing. But of course, stronger multilateral organization. We keep turning to the UN. They need to step up. Unfortunately, right now, the war in Ukraine is not helping, because with the war in Ukraine, countries are going back to coal. And who says coal means, of course, a dirty fuel, means more carbon dioxide pumped into the atmosphere again.
Speaking of COVID, now that you just mentioned it, I don't know if I would say that what is our, what did we learn from the pandemic, because we are still in the pandemic. There's a, it's still around. But what has been a life lesson from this pandemic that we can all learn to prevent future, maybe to better manage the future pandemics? And in general, what has been the life lesson from this pandemic?
Well, initially, when I saw the pandemic, I mean, people were saying that it was of a natural origin. And now there's a lot of doubt being cast whether it is a really natural pandemic, it's a natural virus. But having said this, it is not the last pandemic that we have seen. We will get more, we'll get different ones, but I think what we have, the lessons we have to draw from this pandemic is the state of preparedness, the state of preparedness of our infrastructure. And here I speak to African countries that we need to invest in the primary healthcare. Let's forget about all these high-tech technology, medicine, and all the rest of it. We need to start investing in the primary healthcare structures in our countries. And this is something that we need to do. We need also, of course, to look at the social safety net, because what we saw, people being locked down in their house and they can't work. And so these are things that we have to take seriously. But of course, it all comes with the economies. It all comes with the need to spend on the people, to provide this social safety net, to provide jobs, women who operate more in the informal sector, how we can safeguard their jobs. So all these issues come to the table in terms of relooking at what are the tools to put at disposal of our people before proceeding any pandemic or whatever, in terms of addressing the healthcare issue.
And what do you think is the role of Western world in making sure that vaccines are available to everybody, especially as you mentioned in Africa, a lot of people are still unvaccinated, and what's missing and why there is a lack of enough vaccine in developing countries, mostly Africa?
One thing that has also come out very, very like a sore thumb during the COVID is the inequality. What we have seen, in fact, this morning I was reading another interesting article where it says that 20 tycoons in the global north, they have more in terms of resources than the entire global south GDP put together. Now just think about this. Right? Now, you're saying that we're going to have to, we'll be addressing the next pandemic or whatever other, health issues or any other issue for that matter, which will challenge us. I think we're going to have to, again, fortunately, I'm not saying that we don't need to share. This is, again, we have to understand human nature. I think generally human nature, they don't have to like to share. So that's just something that is there all the time. But I think we're going to have to find ways of being more resourceful within our economy, within our region, and help those people who really are in need create opportunities, and this will be done at individual level, at country level, at regional level, and empower those and build our own infrastructures. That's what we'll have to do. To be able to actually look up to the next 20 years or 25 years ahead.
Yeah. Is there any question from the audience? I think we only have about 13 minutes to the end of the webinar. Do we have any question from the public? Okay, maybe not. Okay. Okay, there is one question. Dr. Ameenah, are you able to to see the questions, or I can read it to you?
Yeah, those who believe in political leaders. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, we talk about politics, we talk about politicians. All very good. You know, we are there at a certain time. But I think what we have to really look at, especially in Africa, is because, again, I posit that within the 60 years post-independence history of our continent, is to see to it how we build institutions. And this is something that will stay. It goes beyond, it stays there. Politicians come and go. But I think what we have to really look at is how to build institutions, how to strengthen our institution, how to strengthen our universities, for example, and how to use this institution to generate data which are Africa-centric, for example, because these data obtained indigenously help to shape our policies. So this is something that we'll have to do. And to be able to invest in our institution, to be able to invest in our own people, calls for the politicians to be putting hands in their pockets so that these young people are empowered enough to be able to tackle the challenges of their countries. Otherwise, we're going to see more exodus from the African continent.
So you mean maybe you're encouraging homegrown solution, kind of?
Homegrown solution, more partnership, diaspora actually helping as well. I've said, and I will say it again, I don't expect many people to go back to Africa because once they establish elsewhere, but I think it's on them to give us some of your time. If you can actually help what I call increasingly brain circulation as opposed to brain gain, so that to reverse the trend of brain drain, if we can have brain circulation, when I say brain circulation, it means that the diaspora come and help those who are in need out there on the continent.
Yeah. Dr. Ameenah, I think one really important topic that we cannot end this webinar without talking about is mental health. And I think as we're speaking about COVID, really, you know, COVID has been a great reminder of the importance of mental health. And we've seen a lot of people suffering and, you know, because of so many reasons. But what would you tell us about, you know, like mental health and what's being done and what needs to be done, you know, in investing in mental health in different communities, starting from Africa, of course?
I think this is, again, something where a lot of work has to be done in terms of advocacy, in terms of awareness, creation of awareness for this issue. Because when somebody is suffering from a heart problem, they very easily go to the surgeon and they have the operation and there's no stigma, there's no taboo. But there's still plenty of taboo in terms of mental health. And this is what we need to be able to address. Break the taboo, treat mental health like any other ailment, any other disease, and ensure that people get the right support. And sometimes this kind of support that people need for mental health is very, very basic. Just access a phone, for example, and to be able to talk to somebody anonymously. I mean, these are the support that people need. In fact, yesterday I was watching TV and they have come up with fantastic solution in Zimbabwe, I think, or Zimbabwe or in Malawi, where you have a chair and it just says a friendship chair. In a park somewhere, people come there and they talk to people. And they have found that this is a fantastic way of addressing some of the mental health challenges of that city.
I have another question from the audience that says the narrative of African politics is that politics is dirty, right? And can women clean it up? What's your experience with that?
Can we, sorry, the last bit you said?
Oh yeah, the narrative of African politics is that politics is dirty, or like and what is the role of women in making sure that, from your experience, that we make a difference, we make it better?
If you look at the glass being half full or half empty, African continent, we have had 6 women leaders, right? Americas, not many, right? So there has been progression. There has been, of course, if you look at Asia, women do better in Asia as well. So it seems to be inversely proportional. The poorer the country, the more emancipated the women are. I don't know whether this is an equation which apply everywhere. But what I'm saying is that we need more women, but of course, women to come to that space is very, very difficult because of all the conditions which are united to make sure that the woman is not represented. So it's a fight that women have to actually do. But how do we do that? Is first of all ensure that we have a community of women where women help each other, where women support each other, because unfortunately, women are women's worst enemies. And this is something that I say that I have given myself this task of doing. We have to learn to work together, that community of women who can help other women, so that I don't have to cite Madeleine Albright all the time to say that there's a special place in hell for those women who don't help women. So we have to keep on helping. It's only then, of course, policies. Governments have to enact the right policies to ensure that there is at least a quota. I don't like to use the word quota, but it's an ill which is necessary right now to ensure the participation of women in that space. And gradually, of course, once she starts moving, then the quota system will just die natural death. But right now, we need the quota system to help women.
And actually, that ties to another question that we have from the audience that says, in thinking about the challenges women face in trying to have it all, I wonder if you could speak a little more about the challenges of balancing family, whether that be a nuclear family or extended, but you are a mother, as you mentioned, and with career and other aspirations.
Yeah. Again, I would be very lucky. I would be very honest with you. We know women, we have to make choices. We have 24 hours in a day. A man doesn't have these choices to make, because a man can swan into the house at 9 p.m. and the whole society will say that he's hardworking. But if a woman does that, I mean, she's not serious, because she's not an irresponsible mother or a housewife and all the rest of it. So this is something that the cliche we have to cope with. And then there is also the cliche that this is what happened to me when I said I'm going to have a family and I'm also going to have a career. So there's something that goes, and that what goes is social life. So you have to build your social life around your family and your work, and you get on along with that. But more importantly, and this is where again we are blessed in the global south, is that we can afford to have house support, house help. And this brings a lot of change and a lot of help to that woman who wants to go back to work immediately after maternity leave. So these are things that we have, the structures we have to build. And of course, having the creche at work as well, all these help. So we need to ensure that the woman can be a successful, of course, a thriving mother, but nothing prevents her from going back to work when the time comes.
Could you share with us maybe some of the self-care routines that you practice, maybe
Well,
you stay grounded?
As a mother, you have to be multitasking. So when I was traveling, I used to ensure that the uniforms, all the 6 or 7 uniforms per day were ironed up. The lunches and the dinners were all labeled in the freezer. And you have to do all these sort of gymnastics when you go. But of course, you have to make sure there's somebody there to look after the boys and the girl when I was traveling. But, women, again, they are very good at multitasking. And this is one of the advantages we have. And we have to really, make the most of it, because that's a blessing to be able to have been able to become a mother.
A blessing indeed, yeah. Dr. Ameenah, you really have a vast experience and knowledge, and you are an inspiration to so many of us, and it's a huge pleasure to hear from you. But I don't know if this is going to be hard for you to choose, but do you have one particular moment that you could share with us that really touched you during your either as a president or even in other career experience that you have had, that really is still stuck with you until today?
When I was when I was sworn in June, I remember in July of that year, immediately after being sworn in as president, I heard there was a rioting in one of the villages. People have kind of messed around with some temples. And I know that this was likely to actually spill over a bit, like not as the Rwanda, but it can spill over to become something which becomes unmanageable at the end. So what I did is that I was only 1 month into the presidency. So I asked for all the religious leaders to come to my office. They all came. I thought I was going to get about 10 or 12 people. I tell you, when I went into that room, I had in front of me about 100 people in that room. And I said to myself, wow, now what do I do? So being Muslim, and of course, the one who was actually the culprit was Muslim, and they actually had antagonized some Hindus in that group. So I knew that it was a very, very sensitive issue. So as soon as I went into that room, I just went and said this, Namaste, in Hindi. I could feel the tension drop, 10 points almost, right? You could feel the tension. And I went there and I held each one by the hand and I made all of them hold their hands together. And we sat there for about half an hour and we chatted and we chatted and we chatted. And I tell you, by the time they left, which was about an hour later, I could feel the tension really going down. And then they went back and they started this conversation with, the rest of the village and why. And of course, all this was filmed and they showed that the president was there trying to kind of liaise with the raging groups and the warring groups. And that was a very, very proud moment initially at the beginning. And this is what prompted me to encourage this interfaith and interreligious and intercultural dialogue. Because while I say that our diversity is our strength, it needs to be enacted on the ground. So I would celebrate a lot of the religious festival in different communities. For example, I would celebrate Christmas, which is a Christian festival, with the Muslims. And the following year, I'll celebrate Diwali with the Muslims, that kind of thing, interfaith. And it did actually it did tilt in the mind of people. And this is something we can engage in. Because to have a stability in any country, for country to progress, we need to have that kind of stability, understanding. And why do people war with each other, fight with each other? Is because they don't understand. And people say, we need to actually be more tolerant. And I was saying at the time, no, I don't like the word tolerant. We need to actually add value to each other, because value is much more positive than tolerance. And that was a very, very special moment during my presidency, over and above the empowerment of young people and all the rest of it. But I think that we need to really look at the strength of our social fabric, because this is what ensures stability, peace. Of course, progress is built on stability and peace.
Yeah, that's a really great lesson for us. Like University of British Columbia being in Canada, where there is all this diversity, but also, we still have a long way to go, where they still have a long way to go in terms of diversity and inclusion. So maybe, using global dialogues and bringing people together, it's really important that we celebrate diversity. Diversity is not it should not be a problem. It should be celebrated. It should be, yeah.
Can you imagine at a very mundane level, even having your dinner, can you imagine only eating carrots every day? No, you need potatoes, you need carrots, you need meat, you need peas. It brings in the diversity, it brings in the strength. And even as a scientist, we all know that genetically, when your genes are mixed up with other genes, it makes the germplasm very strong. So you need that diversity in order to be able to actually survive. Now, especially now we talk about climate change.
To wrap it up, because we are like 1 minute late, I think I would like to end this on a really good note, on a beautiful note. Your footprint in the history books of the flora and fauna of Mauritius and Africa is undoubtable. I would presume you are also an avid gardener, are you?
Yes, I am indeed.
So, if you were a flower, which one would it be?
I would be an orchid.
Ooh, Why?
I would be an orchid because orchids come in all shape and sizes, diversity, they adapt everywhere. You can plant them in the tropical rainforest. You can plant them in the soil, and it gives us beautiful flowers. And so I'll be very happy to be an orchid. If I were an animal, I would be a cat, because a cat always lands on its feet.
Oh, that's really powerful. Dr. Ameenah, really, really thank you so much for this inspiring, amazing conversation. We are all inspired and we are really grateful that you were able to join us. Now, I think I would like to pass into Jess for the wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. What a great way for me to start the morning. I am completely enamored with Dr. Ameenah, your journey. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you for staying up late. I know it's I think an 11 or 12-hour time difference, so hopefully you'll get a good evening's rest. Lillian, thank you for the commendable job as a moderator. You've done a great job really engaging and asking Ameenah the right questions. Edward and team, thank you for that beautiful performance. Even though we had a little hiccup, I think we feel energized after that. And for the audience, thank you for taking your time to sit and listen. And also some of these questions, I know we didn't get to all of them, but however, we're very grateful for you taking the time to engage with us. Just a reminder, this event is recorded and a recording will be sent to you after the event for those who registered. LINA is thankful and indebted to the support offered by UBC. And before ending my closing remarks, I want to convey a special thanks to Tamara, Christina, and Nelly for their priceless contributions for running a smooth event. Thank you once again. Have a lovely day or evening wherever you're streaming this from.
Bye-bye.